today is one example of Florida really leading the nation in terms of what we're doing to stop the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, if you think of where we are with respect to the CCP, they have established a position of economic might, of industrial hegemony, and their military is far stronger today than it was 20 or 25 years ago. They have a leader who's very ideological and is intent on expanding CCP influence, not just in their region, but even around the globe. Part of the reason we're in this predicament is because elites in our own country for a generation have sought short-term profits over long-term U.S. interests. They thought people were making money. That was good for some, and they didn't have a long view of how that would work in terms of America's industrial base here at home or America's security abroad. And so what's developed, I think, is a relationship that really lacks symmetry and reciprocity. China does not do trade with us. China dumps products here, and it's very difficult for our businesses to be able to access their market. That's completely at the whim of the CCP. So you really have an unfair trading relationship. They do dump products, they take our copyrights, and they take our patents, and yet a lot of people have not done very much about it who've been in positions of authority to do so. So you see that, you see the imbalance, and you also see their ambitions here in the United States. They have had a concerted effort to acquire farmland throughout the United States. In fact, they were trying to acquire land in Florida in Levy County, and that ended up not working out, thankfully, because there was some opposition. But nevertheless, you see what they're doing. And I look at things like farmland. It's important for community, it's important for business and jobs and the economy, but our food security is also national security. And so we don't want the CCP in charge of any of the food production. So when you see that, when you see what they're doing in the Western Hemisphere to expand their influence, we really need to have a unified effort in this country to deter the CCP's ambitions and their influence. And part of that is asserting our economic sovereignty. One of the things that we saw throughout the years, but COVID was, I think, the most dramatic, almost anything that you needed for COVID, and look, some of the stuff people were scurrying for in hindsight, you probably didn't need it, but people didn't know at the time, so they were doing it. I think almost 100% of it was produced in China. It was pretty close, if it's not 100%. And there's so many things that our economy is dependent on China for, and it's given them more leverage and more power as a result. So we do need to assert our economic sovereignty. Part of that is bringing supply chains home and getting more stuff here as we build up our military, which I know this president won't do, but we need to do. You're also expanding the industrial base here in America, which we need to do to counter China. So today, we're really recognizing the threat, and we're taking action and really doing measures that no other state has done at this level. And I want to thank the legislature for recognizing that we needed to step up and make things happen. So I'm going to be signing a series of bills today aimed at curbing the influence of the CCP, both in our country and in the state of Florida. The legislation, SB 264, will prohibit the purchase of farmland in Florida by the CCP and other foreign countries of concern, because we believe protecting our food supply is a security issue, and we want to make sure that our agriculture land is not compromised by CCP influence. Now, the prohibition in that bill is not just limited to farmland. It also includes land within 10 miles of any military installation or any type of critical infrastructure in our state, and that ensures our seaports, it ensures our airports, power plants, telecom systems, and other critical infrastructure will not be compromised by the CCP or any foreign adversary. So that will make a big, big difference. The second bill we're signing is Senate Bill 846. It prohibits state universities, state colleges, their employees and representatives from soliciting or accepting gifts in their official capacities from the CCP or any foreign country of concern. It also prohibits state universities and colleges from accepting any grant from or participating in any agreement or partnership with any college or university based in a foreign country of concern. And part of that is because I think the CCP has done a really, really effective job at identifying some of the soft underbelly of American society and really focusing on academic infiltration and influence. And they've been able to expand their influence in academia tremendously. Part of the reason because they're throwing a lot of money around. And so in Florida, we say, not here, not on our watch. And I think that that bill is going to be something that's going to be very, very significant. We're also going to be signing SB 258. And what that does is it recognizes how the CCP has used apps and devices like TikTok to access personal information and to compile data on Floridians and on the American people. Now, we, as a state, of course, there's different things the state will have, driver's license info, all these other things, and there's certainly cyber attack attempts all the time that you're having to fight back. So you see, but what this is doing is it's blocking access to dangerous applications like TikTok on all government and education institutions, servers, and devices. Now, we did do from the state perspective, an executive order last year that covered not just TikTok, actually covered a lot. We weren't really using that in any of our state agencies, but we made sure that that was the case, as well as other related or similar applications. This codifies that in statute, but also applies it to all levels of government. So it's just not the state government, it's also local government, and it also does the state universities. And so if you're trying to get on the Wi-Fi or something with one of these CCP-backed apps, it's not going to let you go and do that. And we think that that's appropriate because we think whatever utility that these applications have is clearly outweighed by the benefit that the CCP gets from data mining and being able to collect information. So those are going to be three really, really significant pieces of legislation. It builds off what we've already done since I've been governor. We have fought back against theft and trafficking of trade secrets, with China is the top of the heap in that, and we've had additional penalties added to be able to do that. We also nixed Confucius Institutes in the state of Florida, and so these Confucius Institutes would be set up. We had one at Miami-Dade College, and it's kind of put out as like more goodwill, but in reality, it's a way to put CCP propaganda onto our college and university campuses, and we clearly do not want to be in a situation where we're doing that. So today, Florida makes it very clear: we don't want the CCP in the Sunshine State. We want to maintain this as the free state of Florida, and that's exactly what these bills are doing. Got any questions back there?
I have two questions. First is you mentioned that this is a huge threat to our economy, strategy, and security.
What I'd say to the average Floridian is your state government takes the security of this state very seriously, and there's a lot that the federal government needs to do, of course, and that goes for our border, which is a total disaster and is going to get worse this week, and it goes to having a strong military, it goes to protecting Americans from Chinese influence in the economy and make sure we have more economic self-sufficiency. And there's a lot that's been derelict over the years with that. And I think what we can tell Floridians is we're getting ahead of things. As you start to see what the CCP is doing with the farmland, we reacted very quickly. Also with all the other critical infrastructure. And so this is the strongest in the country. I think people instinctively realize when you have a junta, a ruling junta dedicated to communist ideology like the CCP, that's not someone you want in your backyard. And that's not somebody that is going to be productive operating in the state of Florida. And so today we say no, and that's not going to happen here. And I hope all states follow suit and follow Florida's lead.
National threats and things that President Biden is doing that you would do differently. Do you have any timeline for a possible potential run?
Well, what I would just say is this. I think if you look at some of the problems in our country, I think things have gotten very bad very quickly over just a short period of time. And I think a lot of it is due to a lack of leadership. I think it's due to adherence to left woke ideology, which will destroy this country if it's allowed to take hold everywhere. That's why we say Florida is where woke goes to die, because we fight back against it. And so I think part of when you look at foreign threats and you look at a country like China and their ambitions, one, you got to recognize the folly of prior American policies for the last generation. Remember, they told us if you put China in the World Trade Organization and grant them most favored trade status, that they would end up becoming capitalist democracy. That's what these elites were saying would happen. In reality, China got much richer. They created a massive industrial base, and they've used that to fuel more military and really to fortify Xi Jinping's ambitions. So that's just the reality of what happened. The elites in this country let us down. It's also the case when you start talking about somebody like China and really any threat that you can think of. A strong America abroad requires a strong America at home. And I think the elites in this country have ignored problems at home for far too long. You just look at the southern border. People are dying because of the fentanyl that is pouring in across that border. What kind of a nation just allows tens of thousands of people to die at the hands of fentanyl that the cartels are bringing over? What kind of a country allows Mexican drug cartels to rule our own border of our own country? So you see failure after failure, and there's a lot of threats to this country. But I'll tell you, if we can't get our house in order here at home, we've got no chance to deal with any of these other issues abroad. Yes?
Did you get any trade deals overseas for Hernando County?
Excuse me?
Did you get any trade deals overseas for Hernando County?
So we actually, not here, there's one, and I think Jennifer, we actually got a pretty neat MOU for Polk County for some of the stuff that we're doing. But I think what will end up happening is when you do so we did Trade Mission to Israel 2019. We kind of stopped doing them once COVID hit because, I just told people, I'm like, I am not testing. I am not doing vax passports. If you're not free, I'm not going there. And there was a lot of restrictions. And so we just said, forget it. So, but now that we came, and so, but the Israel one, we did a bunch of MOUs, and we did do MOUs on this trip it's really the state as a whole for most of them. But what's happened is when you go and you tell Florida's story, people get excited about the opportunities. And so we still see dividends from that trip in 2019. So I think what will happen is, we'll point, there's going to be a Japanese-Florida space relationship that's developing. We'll probably have an agreement there. We have the South Korea with the clean hydrogen, more deals with Israel, and it's great. But I think even more than that is the follow-on, the relationships, and at the end of the day, people see the United States, the center of gravity is shifting in this country dramatically away from blue states and to free states. And that's what's happened in Florida with wealth that's come in, with people that want to invest in Florida. Not everyone in other countries fully appreciates that. Obviously, you're not going to have national corporate media outlets want to say nice things about Florida. That just doesn't happen. And so to be able to talk about the data, the facts, and the opportunities, people really get interested. So I think you're going to end up seeing more and more things happen as a result. And I think that'll be good for the state. Yes, sir. Well, I think that's a little bit different. I mean, that was not necessarily having diplomatic relationship. I think is much different than saying we're going to put them in the World Trade Organization and grant them MFN, which was in the late 90s, beginning of 2000. Because what's ended up happening is you have unfair trade. It's not free trade with China, and they've really manipulated that to create this big industrial capacity. Some of ours has been hollowed out as a result, and it's created a situation where so much is now dependent on our economy in China. You can go to any business just about that makes things, and the chance that at least something comes from China is pretty high. And so that's just where we find ourselves. So I think it was a lack of vision into thinking what were the implications of that. And I think the thought was, by empowering China, would you end up making China more like in the community of nations and be more even democratic? And that was the bet. And we just have to understand that bet was not correct. And it's created a situation where we now have some significant stuff to deal with. All right, guys, thank you. We'll see you soon.